really good, and everybody was having a really good time, that we didn't have any issues before all this started. And we know that's obviously not true. That's obviously not the case. There were issues, there were problems, there was inequality, there was poverty, there was brokenness on all levels, right? It's just now it's a different kind, right? Things things that have always been are now revealed, right? And things that we turn the blind eye to is now much more out in the open, right? And we probably all can think of several things that I'm assuming or referring to. Um, and it's a very interesting time to like actually take a look and be like, you know, how much how much different is this? How much worse is this? Are things actually much more broken than they were, or were things already, you know, this way and we didn't really want to realize it? But this topic is not really about, really digging into what's broken on a macro level, right? I'm not getting into geopolitics or societal societal norms or inequality or anything like that. But the idea is like, okay, we're in this situation, and it's an amazing time to not only figure out structurally what's wrong, but actually personally what's wrong, what's broken within each and every one of us, right? And what brokenness existed much earlier than before COVID, before Corona ever appeared, right? And I can argue that this is the perfect time to actually dig into that and really think through that question. So that brings us to this idea of self-image, and how oftentimes like our self-image actually has been broken for a very long time, and the way we've perceived ourselves. We've had the wrong perception of ourselves for years now, on many different levels, on a spiritual level, on a personal level, on a physical level, um, on basically every level. Oftentimes we have a very kind of disrespectful view of ourselves, and the way God created us and made us. Um, and what I think is that, if we can use this time to rebuild that self-image, if we can use this time to really come out of this stronger, knowing ourselves more, knowing the way God created us and made us, um, and why he made us, then we come out of this much stronger, no matter how long it takes, right? We come out of it much stronger, and we come out of it as really a tool and a force that God can use, that he really wants us to be. So with that, I want to get into the talk. And I want to kind of just dig into, this concept before we get into self-image. I want to talk initially about identity. A lot of people, think they're the same thing. There's an idea that self-image and identity, isn't that the same thing? Isn't that, can't you use those interchangeably? And it's not the same thing, actually. Does anybody have a sense of like what identity means? I'm going to give you a definition, but what is identity to you? And I want to get a sense of like what we're thinking identity is, and then maybe how it is different from self-image.
Identity is kind of like who you would define yourself as.
Yeah. Okay. Who we define ourselves as. Okay. Anything else?
I would sort of think it's more how, rather who you are, like irreducibly. Like, what do you boil? Like, if you were to distill your being, what comes out of that?
Yeah. When you're describing yourself to someone, how do you describe yourself to someone? Like if you were to use words to define you, right? If I were to ask you, who are you? Mina, who are you? Verena, who are you? Mirna, who are you? Abuna, who are you? Like, how would you describe yourself? Or anybody on the call? What are definitions we ascribe to ourselves that we identify as?
I say I'm Egyptian a lot to people
I'm Egyptian.
because it's unique.
Yep. I'm Egyptian. What else?
Student.
Sorry?
I'm a student.
I'm a student. Okay. Anybody else? Anybody else? I'm a Christian, right? When we identify as a Christian, when people identify as Republicans or Democrats, right? Their political identities, right? So all of these are used to identify, are used in a way that we identify ourselves to each other, right? And the way we actually, what we use to actually identify, what we use to take on an identity, right? And what Mary said actually is very much the case. Identity is our overall idea of who we are. The term identity refers to the definitions that are created for a superimposed on the self, right? So meaning that these words actually existed before we came to be, and we've taken these words and now we ascribe them to ourselves, right? The word and the term Christian and Republican and Democrat and all these different things, right? They existed, and we said, okay, yeah, identify like that. Let me take that. I'm Egyptian. Let me take that. That's now me, right? And then I'm using that to define who I am to the world, right? This term that I just said, the term identity refers to definitions that are created for and superimposed on the self. Is it's a definition from a guy named Roy Baumeister. He's a self-concept expert. So he's a psychologist that basically has written a lot about this stuff. In other words, identity is the whole picture of who we believe we are. The whole picture of who we believe we are. That means when we identify as certain things that I just mentioned, and you can probably add a bunch of these terms, there are certain things that go into that, right? When you hear somebody is a Democrat, Republican, a Christian, whatever other term you want to use here, you then start assuming some things about this person. You assume some beliefs that they have. You assume maybe the way they would act, the things that they would agree with, the things that they would disagree with, right? You would assume sometimes a moral set that they would have, right? And then you would not assume other things, right? So you would say this person actually believes this stuff, this, and this, but they actually probably don't believe this, and this, and this, right? Now, why is that different from self-image? Why is that different from self-image? So this differentiation or this distinction is actually super important, right? If I were to ask you what's self-image now, what would you say that is? And I'll give you, I'll clear something up. Self-image is actually a part of somebody's identity. So you have identity, and within that identity, you have self-image. What is self-image then? Somebody have an idea? Who we got?
Is it like your worth?
Your worth? Okay.
How you see yourself, like independent of how other people might see you.
Independent of how other people might see you. How you see yourself, independent of how others might see you. I like that. Anything else?
It's how you perceive yourself.
Yeah. Okay. So this is, definitions you can find online, self-image, the idea of one's own abilities, appearance, personality. Again, the perception that you guys already said, the perception you have of yourself, but it's also the perception of what you can do, right? What you're capable of, right? What you're able to actually achieve and not achieve based on these things that you're given, right? And these are all thoughts that you have about yourself. And how are those thoughts and those perceptions actually built up? How are those thoughts and perceptions and your self-image, how is that built up over time?
I think it's usually by comparing yourself to some sort of standard. So some people compare themselves, some people set their standards relatively high in terms of comparing themselves to certain people. And if they don't meet those standards, they might mentally like degrade themselves, or they think they're worth less than, they actually are. Yeah.
I would say also through your different successes and failures.
Yep. Okay. So what you've done in the past, right? What you've done in the past. So your view of yourself, right? And then how we interact with others and what we think are our limits and not our limits. A lot of it is based off of ultimately what we did in the past, what people have said about us or told, have actually like how people have reacted to us, right? And then ultimately it's like these assumptions and thoughts that we've built up over time that now is ingrained as, now this is my impression of me, right? If let's say I've been skinny my whole life, right? I've been skinny my whole life. So now I don't think I can ever, be, very, I don't think I can ever be bigger, right? For instance, or if I've been overweight my whole life, right? I see myself as an overweight person. So now I eat, no matter what I do, there's this thing ingrained in me. I can lose a little bit of weight. I can drop 10 pounds. I can drop 20, but still there's this thing, this underlying thought in my head that I am overweight. I'm a fat person, right? And no matter what I do, that's who I am. Why? Because that is what either people have said about me, or that's been my lifestyle over the course of many years, or that's just been me. So now I don't think, even when things change or I take certain actions, that's who I perceive myself to be, right? So distinction between identity and self-image is, identity are these preconceived, like these terms that have been in the world that I've taken onto myself. And now my self-image is actually how I perceive myself to be to the rest of the world. Does that make sense? So it's how you believe others see you. It could be how you believe others see you, Besim. It could be how you believe others see you. Or it could be these, or it could be just these assumptions or some paranoia that you believe other people see you like this, or you see yourself like this, right? It actually could be a misconception, right? People don't necessarily have to see you in a certain way, but you perceive that they see you in a certain way. So that's how you see yourself. Or that's what you're giving off to the world. And that's your self-image. That makes sense? All right. Does anybody have any questions before we move on? All right. I'm going to read you a definition. This comes from the Mountain State Centers for Independent Living. I don't know what that is, but I like them. Self-image is how you perceive yourself. It is a number of self-impressions that have built up over time. These self-images can be very positive, giving a person confidence in their thoughts and actions, or negative, making a person doubtful of their capabilities and ideas. You spoke generally about most of that. Okay, so we have now a distinction between identity, and then, in other words, the identity is the whole. Identity is the whole picture of who we believe we are and who we tell ourselves and others that we are. While self-image is one piece of that picture. So I have a question: Can identity and self-image not be directly aligned? I'm going to say it again. Can identity and self-image not coexist, or can they be opposite of each other?
Yes, I think so.
I think so
Okay,
too.
I think they can be opposite.
good. Tell me why.
So, for example, what just came to mind initially was if you say or if you introduce yourself as a Christian, but internally you feel like really far from God, or you feel like a sinner, or you feel, all those negative feelings. So those would be opposing each other.
Exactly. That's perfect. That's exactly the case, right? So these two things are directly opposite of each other. Samir, you want to say something?
I was just thinking, يعني I agree with Stephanie 100%, but Christianity does not mean that I'm gonna be sinless or I'm gonna be perfect, or يعني I'm Christian by belief and struggling to be perfect, and that's how I see it. But at the same time, I see what Stephanie is saying. I can say that I'm Christian, and my behavior is completely the opposite of being Christian.
Right.
So I don't know how can we distinguish between these two things.
But Sam, I want to distinguish something. Your behavior is because of your self-image. It is not your self-image. Does that make sense? The behavior is a reaction to how I feel about myself. It is not myself. Okay? But the self-image is, again, my behavior when I sin, or if I'm not when I sin. Let's make a distinction. When I live a sinful life, when I am living a life of sin, that is a reaction to me having a perception of myself as a sinner, or I'm living, I don't feel like I'm worthy, or I don't feel like I'm good, or I don't feel like I can go back to God, or I don't feel like blah blah blah. That is my perception of myself, and that is why I act in a certain way. That makes sense? Cool. But Steph, I love that point, right? Like those two things are definitely not, they do not align in any way. So I wanna, you kind of, it's a great segue, to read John 1, chapter 3. And, I'm going to share it on the screen. I would love somebody to read it if they can. And you can just read till verse 12, please. Can somebody read that?
Okay, I can read.
Great.
Behold, what manner of love and what love the Father has bestowed on us, that we should be called children of God. Therefore, the world does not know us because it did not know him. Beloved, now we are children of God, and it has not yet been revealed that what we shall be, but we know that when he is revealed, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. And everyone who has this hope in him purifies himself just as he is pure. Whoever commits sin also commits lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. And you know that he was manifested to take away our sins, and in him there is no sin. Whoever abides in him does not sin. Whoever sins has neither seen him nor known him. Little children, let no one deceive you. He who practices righteousness is righteous, just as he is righteous. He who sins is of the devil, for the devil has sinned from the beginning. For this purpose the Son of God was manifested, that he might destroy the works of the devil. Whoever has been born of God does not sin, for his seed remains in him, and he cannot sin because he has been born of God. In this the children of God and the children of the devil are manifest. Whoever does not practice righteousness is not of God, nor is he who does not love his brother. For this is the message that you heard from the beginning, that we should love one another, not as Cain, who was of the wicked one and murdered his brother. And why did he murder him? Because his works were evil and his brother's righteous.
Thank you. So just right from the beginning, it goes back to Stephanie's point, right? If our identity is we're Christian, right? But I don't feel like I'm a Christian, right? My self-image is not that of a Christian. It is that of a sinner. If I look at myself as a sinner, if I look at myself as a person that, is drowning in sin, then it is very hard for those two things to coexist. But to actually rebuild our self-image, it's very important to know what it's supposed to be, right? It's very important to know how we were actually created, what it's supposed to be, right? So right from the beginning, he says, because of the love that the Father has bestowed on us, we are called the children of God, right? If we were to say, what's our identity as Christians, it is the children of God, right? We are the children of God. I am a child of God. So as you say, I'm a student, or I'm a Republican, or I'm whatever, you can identify yourself as the children of God. And what does that mean? What comes with being a child of God? It comes it's very black and white here, right? So he's like, if you are a child of God, there's certain things that come with that. Whoever commits sin also commits lawlessness, and sin is lawlessness. And you know that he who was manifested to take away our sins, and in him there is no sin. Whoever abides in him does not sin. Whoever sins has neither seen him nor known him, right? Little children, do not deceive yourselves. He who practices righteousness is righteous, just as he is righteous. But he who sins is of the devil, for the devil has sinned from the beginning, right? It's very clear. If that is your identity, right? If that is actually the way you're going to describe yourself, then the sin should, or the lifestyle of sin should not be in your life, right? But it is the understanding, and it's actually the belief that we are actually these people that they're talking about here, right? That Christianity actually means that we are directly aligned we are called to be the children of God. That's who he made us to be. So if we believe that, what comes with that? It comes all of these things, right? In this, the children of God and the children of the devil are manifest. Whoever does not practice righteousness is not of God. If we are not practicing righteousness, we're not of God, nor is he who does not love his brother, right? And all the things that come with that. This is important because if we don't know how we were made or created, we cannot move forward to be who we're supposed to be. And does anybody have any questions about that before we move on? No. Okay. So what actually stops us from having this self-image that I can identify as the child of God, and I can live up to this image that he's created me to be? What actually stops us from that? I'm asking you, what actually stops us from that?
It seems unattainable.
Seems unattainable. Good. Well, because it's too lofty of a goal.
Yeah, it's not I mean, we know that it is a good goal, but it's not like a smart goal, like realistic, timely. You can't put your arms around it really immediately.
Yeah. But what stops us from at least having that self-image? Because I agree, I don't look at it necessarily as a goal, but I look at it as a choice, or as a lifestyle, right? So no, not actually as a choice, as a lifestyle, but it's something that I'm taking on, and now it's something that I'm projecting to the world, right? So for instance, when you take on the label of being a let's just stick with Democrat or Republican, you are now then projecting certain beliefs on people, right? What stops us when we take on the identity of Christian? What stops us from projecting that image? So Mina said too lofty of a goal. Maybe it's too much of a responsibility.
How others might react to the way that you go about, I guess, sharing that part of your identity with the world.
Okay. So I'm guessing you're saying doing certain things, not doing certain things.
More or less.
Okay. What else?
Also, like,
I would say
sorry, the shame and regret that comes with not always living up to those standards that you uphold for yourself, or that you strive to live by, to, you know, like, you're a Christian, there are things you should do, certain ways that you should behave, and when you miss the mark on those things, it's kind of hard to like share it with others when you yourself aren't living that way.
Yeah. So
Yeah, I was going to say something along those lines. Sort of maybe like fear of judgment, because if you claim to be this person, this Christian, who follows certain things and then you fall short, it's easier to not say anything, and this way you're not accountable to anybody. So no one's going to come back to you and say like, oh, you said you're a Christian, you're not supposed to do this. So it might be an element of
sorry, you broke up.
just fear.
Okay. An element of fear. Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. So I love everything you guys said, and I think a lot of it is, what is the reaction that people would have to this image? If I actually had this image, and I wanted to project that to the world, how would people react to that? It's maybe fear, anxiety, not living up to this this portrait that people might have of a Christian, and it might not live up to. Maybe I'll disappoint God. Maybe I won't be a good ambassador for him, right? But I actually want to go a little bit not deeper, but in a different direction, where a lot of it, I think, at least for myself, is based on, again, how I've perceived myself based on my own past experiences, and like to leading up to this point, right? So if I've always thought of myself as, man, like every time I tried to be close to God, I messed up, or like every time I tried to be committed, I wasn't committed, or I let the ball drop. Every time I tried to lead a certain lifestyle, or I tried to stop this, or I tried to add this to my life, or I tried to take this out of my life, I gave up, right? And now it just is what it is, right? This is my life. This is my lifestyle. This is who I am, and there's not much more I can do. And I give myself all these excuses, and I project all this negative energy on myself, and that's it, right? This is what I'm called to, and I'm going to do the best I can with it, but this is who I am. And I think a lot of that are lies that the devil feeds us, right? When we talk about like the things that the devil is feeding us and why we sin and why we don't sin certain times, if he does one thing, he consistently lies to us about who we are, right? Who we are, right? Every time we want to do better, he's like, but remember that thing you did like yesterday or last year or last month, or remember that time you messed up that other time, and you want to do different now, right? You want to be different now. You're not that dude. Like this is you. Remember yesterday, that was you. Tomorrow, the version you want to be is not you. So you can't do it, right? And you get so consumed in that it stops us from being the people we actually want to be, right? It stops us, in Ephesians 10, it says, for by grace you have been saved through faith, and not of yourselves. It is the gift of God, not of works, lest anyone should boast. For we are his workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared before that we should walk in them. So he calls us his workmanship, basically his masterpiece. That's basically what he's saying. You are his masterpiece. And we're looking at ourselves as, am I actually that capable? Do I actually have the capability to be this evangelist that he says I should be, or the salt of the earth? Or do I actually have the ability to fight this sin? Or do I actually have the ability to be any different than I was yesterday? And in the Bible, he consistently calls us his workmanship, his masterpiece. He calls us the child of God. But we consistently forget that because we're reminded, and we remind ourselves with all the nonsense we did yesterday and the month prior and the year prior, right? And then on top of all of that is all the things you guys said, right? Then we're now worried about the fear of how it's going to be projected. And then what if I actually try to be better, but then they remind me of what I did, which oftentimes we do, right? What if we try to be better and they tell me, but remember that time, like, that dude was a big gossip and now he's trying to be better? Or remember that time when, that dude slept around, but he's trying to be better now? No, he can't be better because that's who he was. That's his label. We already labeled him. And now he labeled himself, and now he can't come back. So I guess, my point being that oftentimes, like a lot of the reason why we're being stopped from progression, we're being stopped from this glorious life with Christ, right? We're being stopped from actually living out our true capability, true destiny, all that stuff, all those words, is because we consistently remind ourselves and each other of the people we were. And we want to, because we feel bad about ourselves, we want to force either ourselves or others to stay in their place. Stay in your crap. Don't get out of it. Because if you get out of it, I'm going to feel worse. I'm going to feel worse because I'm still going to be in it. That's going to suck. So if I'm going to be in it, I want to remind you that you're not great either. But as like a loving body of Christ, as a community, as like these, the people we want to go to when the world is falling apart around us, right? This is the place we want to remind ourselves and remind each other that, no, man, like you are called to be the child of God. You are called you are actually his workmanship. You are perfect. You are the thing that he created. Out of all the things he created in the world, he looked at you and said, those are going to be my friends. Those are going to be my children. They're going to be the people I share all of this stuff with. All right. And that's our destiny, right? That's our purpose. Our purpose is to be one and glorified with him. But we can't get there if we consistently look at all the past, right? At everything we've done before. We can't get there. So I'm basically done, but I guess, my takeaway is how do you rebuild this, right? How do we rebuild it? The topic was, how do we rebuild our self-image? And we rebuild it by, being very honest of how we feel about ourselves, right? Being very honest about where we're at, like on an actual like day-to-day basis. Like, how do you feel about yourself? You feel good? You don't feel good? Why do you not feel good? Are there habits in your life that you don't like? Is there something about yourself that you're doing or you're not doing that you don't enjoy? Right? And then really dig into like all these promises that God made. All the things that he called you in the Bible. It's right there. He calls us all this stuff, but we just read it. We just scroll past it. We're like, oh, that's nice. I'm his workmanship. That's cool. I don't know what that means, but that's great. I'm his workmanship. Let me get to that story about the miracles. And ultimately, let's hold each other accountable to this image that he's actually made us to be, right? I got to remind Mina more that he's great, right? It's not in a like a cocky way. It's not in a, oh, I want to ego boost this dude. I want to ego boost this girl. No, but like, you are beautiful. God made you beautiful. God made you perfect. God made you with all the things that you needed, and he didn't make you with a single thing you did not need. Right? Because we always like, oh man, if I just had that one thing, if I had one thing that that dude had, man, I could do something here. Right? Or if I had one thing that that woman had, man, that would make all the difference. But that's not true. That's a lie. Right? That's a lie we tell ourselves, society tells us, and we tell each other. Right? That's a lie. So loving all our everything about ourselves. I'm not going to even call them imperfections, because they're perfect, because God bestowed that on us. That's it. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Regarding the imperfections that you're mentioning.
Yeah.
How would you differentiate between imperfection that God, I wouldn't like, not that God gave you imperfection, but those quirks versus like you changing based off of your experience? So for example, if you have like a bad temper,
Yeah,
because you've gone through like a lot of, I don't know, fights and stuff in your life, so now you just pop off every now and then.
sure.
How do you differentiate those different those two things?
That's a great question. I would say that you can see a lot of characters in the Bible that just redirected their energy, right? So their energy, their personalities were the same, but their energy were redirected in a different way, right? St. Peter, St. Paul, the Samaritan woman, right? You have a lot of these figures in the Bible that redirected a lot of the gifts and the abilities God gave them, and the personalities and the temperament. But a lot of the time, it's how you're directing those gifts, those energies, and the capabilities that He gave you, right? So depending on your self-image or how you're feeling at the time or your belief set at the time, you're going to project these things into the world in a different way, right? So you taking in it's oftentimes like our biggest struggles, right? Like those people that dealt with abuse, and the people that dealt with health struggles, and all these things, right? All these things that develop this like hardening in them, right? That oftentimes is the biggest gift that they can give to the world, right? Those learnings from those struggles, the way that they were able to overcome them, and now what they're able to do in their life, and now projecting that energy based on what they were able to go through. But on the other hand, they can go the complete opposite way, right? They can act out. They can try to gain love and attention in other places. They can do a bunch of other things, right? So it's how you redirect the energy based on the experiences that you have in life. That's what I think.
I like, Yamina, very much what you are saying about the redirection, but I think at the same time we have to differentiate um, between things that I have acquired through my experiences in life, and people have hurt me. And again, you mentioned the idea of the abuse or the violence at home or whatever. Uh, these things have hurt me and have also changed my character and changed the way God wants me to be. So yeah, the idea of redirection is absolutely correct, but sometimes I have to acknowledge and know where the environment and people and situation that I have been put in has affected me negatively, and surrender these things to God and ask Him to bring me back to my worth that I was created with.
Yeah. No, absolutely, Sam. I think you're spot on. Stephanie, does that do those two answers answer that at all?
Yes, yes, thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions or comments or anything? Nope. Okay. I think with that, we're good. Thank you all. We're gonna